Hey everybody, as forewarned, we are going to start jumping into our biology topics. So our first topic is an intro to biological molecules. And so we're going to be taking the next probably week and a half to talk about these. So here we go. So we have two vocab words to start out with to introduce this topic, and those two words are polymer and monomer. So I'm just going to write those words down and talk a little bit about what those things mean. So polymer is our first vocab word. So if we look at that word polymer, the first part of that word, the prefix poly, you've probably seen that before in other words before. That poly means many. So if you see poly as a prefix in a word, that actually just means many. So whatever it's attached to, it's just a lot of them. So polymer, that first one, that prefix means many. So polymer is actually a large molecule or compound composed of many repeating units or smaller molecules. So it's a bunch of small molecules linked together. So it's a bunch of them. So poly means many. Polymers, we'll talk about examples of those, but polymers are also known as macromolecules. So you might see this word somewhere, macromolecule. And just like the first word, this prefix is really important. That prefix macro, you've probably seen macro before, macro and micro. Macro just means large. So a macromolecule is just a huge molecule, which means it's made out of many, many, many smaller molecules. So polymer is a large molecule composed of a bunch of tinier molecules, usually in repeating units. So I like to think of these as like a chain of a bunch of smaller molecules. Now to make this make a little bit more sense, we have to talk about monomers. So let's talk about that word for just a second. So monomer is another really important vocab word that we're going to learn. So monomer is different from polymer. That prefix is still really important. I bet you can guess what mono means. Mono actually just means one or single. So that prefix is really important. So you can probably guess maybe what a monomer is. It's very similar to the word polymer, or it's related. You can kind of tell by the structure of it. So a monomer is a smaller molecule that joins together with other similar small molecules to form a polymer. So think of it like a building block or a link in a chain. So if our polymer is the chain, our monomer is going to be a link in a chain. Or another way to picture this is like a brick wall or a brick building or something like that. The polymer would be the wall or the building, whereas the monomer would be the individual bricks that make it up. So a polymer is usually something, it's not like one or two, it's usually thousands and thousands of repeating units, and monomers are the building blocks that make up polymers. So those are a few examples of visual ways to visualize these ideas. Another way to do it, just to give you guys some visual cues here. So if we were to take an object like this chain, you guys can see this is made up of small repeating units. So each of these little links are very similar, and they link together in a similar fashion, and they all form a longer chain. So these little individual links right here would be the monomers, and then this chain right here together would be the polymer. Another illustration would be like Christmas lights. Christmas lights are tiny little units that link together in a similar fashion to form a longer or a larger chain. So this little light right here would be considered a monomer, and the whole chain of lights right here would be considered the polymer. Okay, so big thing right here, polymer, small unit right here, monomer. Okay, so another word for polymer, the big thing, many repeating units, would be macromolecule. So a macromolecule and a polymer is just a large molecule composed of really tiny really tiny repeating units. Okay, So just another illustration to put in your brain if you need just one more. I am an incredible artist and drew these nice little Lego pieces down here. I looked all over my house for Legos. I don't have Legos. So I just drew a lovely picture for you. So another illustration that you can think of is these Legos. So Legos, the similar ones, they link together and they form a longer chain. So they're very similar looking. And again, these don't actually have to be exactly the same. They can be a little bit different, like these have a little bit different color, but they actually link together in the same fashion to form a larger object, okay? So these would be examples of monomers. So this is a monomer, 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 and this would be your polymer. And again, polymer doesn't mean a specific number, it just means a lot or many. So usually when we're talking about biology, we're talking about quite a few repeating units, so more than just a few, okay? So polymer, poly means many, so a bunch of repeated units. Mono means singular, so that's just one. So these little building blocks link together to form polymers. So we're not talking about Christmas lights or links in a chain or Legos. We're actually talking about molecules. So in biology, we're going to be talking about different molecules that are monomers and different molecules, large ones, that are polymers. Okay, so let's just talk about those for just a second. So the polymers or the large molecules that make up living things are actually called biological molecules. So not a big mystery there, they're just molecules that are biological or have to do with living things. So biological molecules are also known as organic compounds or organic molecules. So organic molecules, organic compounds, biological molecules, same thing. Same thing, different words. You might hear a different word in college if you go on to study biology, so I'm just going to teach you all three of them. So biological molecules, organic compounds, and organic molecules, same thing, okay? So these are the polymers that make up living things. So these actually include 4 types. So there are 4 types of organic compounds, aka biological molecules, aka organic molecules. So there are 4 types that we're going to study. Carbohydrates are the first one, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. So I'm pretty sure that you guys have heard of carbohydrates, maybe lipids, I know you've heard of proteins, and maybe not nucleic acids. So some of those you're more familiar with, some of them a little bit less familiar with. So we're going to study all 4 of those and what their role is in living things. So carbs, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids are the 4 types of biological molecules that we're going to cover. And so we'll probably take a day to cover each. And these are actually a really big deal because we eat them and we are them. So we eat them. Most of what you consume is actually a carbohydrate, a lipid, a protein, or a nucleic acid. So most of the things that we eat are other living things or made out of other living things or once were a part of a living thing. So most of the stuff that we eat is organic compounds, and we ourselves are made up of organic compounds. So if you look at what you are, most of the structure of your body, a lot of our skin, a lot of our muscle mass, a lot of our bone structure is actually proteins. If you look at your skin, you guys are all young, so it's nice and not wrinkly. If you ever look at an old person, the reason their skin is very wrinkly and saggy is because they don't have a good healthy layer of fat under their skin. So the reason that you guys have nice smooth skin is because you have lipids right under your skin, or fat, a really good healthy layer of fat. So you are made up of proteins, you are made up of fat, you are made up of carbohydrates, and you are made up of nucleic acids. Nucleic acids is DNA and RNA. So you don't see this as obviously, but in each one of your cells that make up your body, which you're made out of trillions and trillions of cells, in each one of those cells there's DNA or nucleic acid. So even though it doesn't make up a lot of the structure of your body, we're going to talk about nucleic acids because it's a part of you. So carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids are the 4 biological molecules that we're going to study. And they're a big deal because we eat them and we are them. And they make up every living thing. So that's not just us. They make up every living thing from slugs to rhinos to oak trees. So it's not just humans. Every single living thing is made up of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids in some different configuration. So it's not always the same configuration of those 4 biological molecules, but it's those 4 biological molecules. So a couple of different functions of the biological molecules. They give us energy, and like I talked about, they give us structure. So a lot of our body is made up of these organic molecules, and they also store information. And that might sound like a really weird one, but when we get to DNA and nucleic acids, we're going to talk a little bit about how information is stored. So you guys should have been able to fill out notes from that information. If you have any questions or you need to go back and listen to part of that, go ahead, and I will actually load this link up into the Edmodo folder. This is actually Unit 1, so congratulations, we're done with our review and our pre-units. We're heading into biology, so on Edmodo, if you're looking for any of this Unit 1 or any Unit 1 resources or information or links or notes or anything like that, you go to Unit 1, which is about biological molecules. So that's a basic introduction to biological molecules, aka organic compounds or organic molecules. We've got polymers, big molecules, monomers, the building blocks of those big molecules. The 4 different types are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And then we talked about their functions. So, hope you were able to fill in those notes from this information, and that is your introduction to biological molecules.